All right, everybody. Hello, hello. And before I move on to our main subject, bosses versus bad bosses, hit that subscribe button or like button or follow button, whatever it might be on your podcast or video channel on YouTube. I have a podcast and a video channel, both called Work Farce, FARCE. Hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. We need all the support we can get for the channel right now. All right, let's get right into it. Good bosses versus bad bosses. I'm sure I know where you guys want me to start with the bad bosses. And if you've listened to or watched previous videos, you know that I have somehow talked about a bad boss as being the boss that doesn't really know what kind of work to give you. Like, I have a lot of experience in marketing and communications, but I've had bad bosses that give me like intern work. And that's not using my knowledge, my skill set to the best of their paying ability, if you will. But let's move that aside. That's a little bit different than what we're going to be talking about today. We can talk about micromanaging bosses. I've had plenty of them. I've had the boss who will give you an assignment, and as you're writing it, taking your time in writing it, will ask to look at it, even though it's not completely done or it's in a good place. And then they'll ask you to print out, let's say it's something written, okay? And they'll ask you to print it out, and they'll get a red pen out while, you're at lunch, and they'll just carve that baby up. They'll just carve it up and move things around, and they'll just mark their territory, as I say. And you have to deal with that. The way I look at it, and I've talked to other writers about this. My wife is a very well-established writer, and anything can be rewritten. You can rewrite the Constitution, you can rewrite the Bible, anything can be rewritten. But there comes a point where you got to say, okay, we're going to go with this. And it's one thing to make changes to something that's written to make it better, to add more specifics or more details or updated information, whatever that might be, or naming the third person rather than just naming two people in there. Maybe a third person was important to the project, let's say. There's all that kind of way that you can edit something that's written. There's other ways that you can, what I say, mark your territory, P on your, what's yours, kind of, that you're just kind of marking it up to mark it up. And I got to tell you, when I was young and I was very nervous about my writing, although I was probably relatively capable, I wasn't a bad writer. I'm a much better writer now than I was back then. And that's just because I've kept up with it, because my job calls for more and more and more and more writing. Whether I'm writing scripts or news releases or speeches or blogs or you name it, I've just kept up with it. Now, sometimes I have AI write it, for the first draft, and then I go through and I edit that. But I'm still using my knowledge. Anyway, this boss would just carve things up. The one time he gave me an assignment to do something and have it done in a hurry. Well, I got done with it in about 2 hours. And I was talking with him. We just happened to be in the kitchen together, and he asked me, "Oh, how was that assignment?" And I think he wanted me to say, "Oh my God, it was so tough. It was so difficult. Oh my God, I said, "Yeah, it was. I'm done. I sent it to you." And he sort of looked at me, and he knew that he couldn't do it that quickly. And I said, "Well, I used to write on deadline when I did football games for a little community newspaper. The football game would be a Friday night. I'd have to turn it in by 10:30. The game would get over at 10. I'd have the thing written by 10:30, and I'd have to put it in. Otherwise, I wasn't getting paid." And he didn't like that at all. He came back at me. He gave me something. It had so much red ink on it. I thought he was coloring it and not writing on it. I mean, it was unbelievable. So there's that micromanaging boss. And then there's the boss who just wastes your time. The kind of boss that has you come in for no reason. Like if you're working remote or you have a hybrid oh, can you come in on Tuesday and go through this or that with me? And you get there and they're not ready for you. And you wait an hour. And that after an hour, hour and a half is when they finally say, okay, now let's talk about this project. You've just wasted an hour of my time, not to mention today's my remote day, or I always work remote, or whatever the case is. You had me come into the office, get ready, come into the office, look really nice, all that kind of stuff, come into the office and then sit here for an hour or an hour and a half. Bad boss. Bad boss. Then I have other bosses who are the antithesis of that, who will say, you know what? I'm not going to have it ready on Tuesday. Let's meet on Wednesday. Good boss. Understands. Can see the future and say, I'm ready, I'm not ready. Those are good bosses. They don't waste your time, because a good boss values your time. They value and they understand that your time is also theoretically money, or your time is valuable to you. So when the boss has you come in on a day that you don't normally come in for whatever reason, whether you work remote full time or you have a hybrid situation, and they're not ready for you in the first hour, hour and a half, waste your time. Or they'll schedule a call. This is another one that I used to get a lot. They'll schedule a call at, very early in the morning or very late in the afternoon, or just any time in general. And they'll push it back, and then they'll push it back. And you have this call, and it's like, can we stick to a time? You have the boss who's disorganized. Disorganized bosses are bad bosses. They don't value your time. And I know that you work for them. That's what they believe. You work for them. If I make you wait, you work for me. I'm paying you, or I'm allowing you to be paid, whether they own the company or not. Well, yeah, but it really bothers me that I've wasted an hour and a half waiting for you to reschedule my call with me. My Zoom call, whatever, virtual call, digital meeting, whatever you might want to call it, whatever it might be, what if it's just a phone call, you've wasted that time. And so I can't start another project because I have to wait. And I know that in 30 minutes you want to call me again, or you're going to call me after your call, but I really don't know when that call is going to be. And I can't move forward with what I'm working on, or I can't do what I'm working on because I can't focus, because I don't know if you're going to call me in the next 3 seconds. All of these things are part of that good boss, bad boss set. Now, a good boss would say, you know what? I can't talk now. Let's reschedule it for 2 or 4 or whatever it might be, or let's do it in the morning at 9:30. Are you available? Boom, it's done. It's done. Now, I've had other bosses who just always assume that my time is their time, and they'll send me a calendar invite for 9 in the morning, and I got to meet with them, and they won't ask. They won't say, hey, are you available? And the one thing about me is, if they can look at my calendar, that's my work calendar. It's not necessarily everything about me. If I have a dentist appointment, I'm not necessarily going to put all those things on my work calendar. I also have a personal calendar that, keeps me disciplined, keeps me on time. If I, have a lunch that might be not business related, it's going to be on there. All of those kinds of things. So being decent, and I know that sounds bad, but just being decent is kind of a good boss these days. And that's exactly the way it is. Bad bosses will have you stay late too. Oh, let's meet at 6 o'clock. Oh, we have this urgent thing, has to be done. It's being done on their timeline because they're your boss and they want to show you that they're your boss. They don't have any rationale behind it other than they believe that that's a good time to have it done. I mean, I've stayed till midnight before. I've stayed till 10. I've worked on my second wedding anniversary until 10 or 11 or something like that. I've done all these things because I have bosses who believe that my time is their time and not my time is my time. And that's where I think a lot of the younger generation, why they really push that home and life or personal life and work life balance, whatever it is. I just always see myself as working. I work 7 days a week. Now I don't work 8 hours every day. Like on Saturday, I probably work 3.5 hours. Sunday, I work two, maybe 2.5 hours. But during the week, it's at least 8 hours, probably a little bit more. And even when I'm not quote unquote working, I'm looking at YouTube videos and figuring out ways that I can improve my videos, or looking at subject matter or topics that I find interesting that I can maybe weave into one of my videos or a podcast or something like that. So basically, I focus in on what I'm talking about on a regular basis. And that's what's key to a lot of this, is getting the information and having the information, and doing that on your own. One important element to be successful is to constantly be looking to learn new things, and I'm constantly doing that. I'm constantly asking why didn't this work and that worked, or why hasn't this worked, or what can I do to improve this? And I take that up on my own time. And you want a boss who can do those things too. You don't want a boss who overreacts about something. It's quite ironic. I had a boss that had me go to some training. Oh, you got to go to this training. It's the best training in the world. It was a snooze fest. It was a week's worth of training they could have done in about a day and a half. There was a lot of repetition. There was the snacks that they provided were months old. The expiration dates were old. It was just like a bad environment for a training session to begin with. Okay. And so they had this training session, and I had to go. And the one thing they said is, if you have a boss that demands you to do X, Y, and Z, that's not a good boss. And my boss was like an apostle of this training place, like a disciple, whatever you want to call it. Like, he mimicked back all the words that they said and all these other kinds of things, which, he didn't have my back. He had their back, and they were the vendor. Okay. But he mimicked back everything that they said. And the problem was, he was doing that thing that they said in the training a good boss doesn't do, and that a bad boss does, that they demand these things, that they want you to get this result right away. And they don't understand that X, Y, and Z take time, or this or that. There's elements to it that aren't fast, that it is a slow process. He was being demanding. His gurus were saying you can't be demanding, but he was demanding. He was totally going against everything that they were preaching and that he adopted. He wasn't adopting it at all. The one thing I've learned in life, and this goes for almost everyone, okay? And this is why I try to stay humble. Some people will say I'm humble. Other people will say he's not humble. Well, I try to stay humble. Everybody has a different perception of themselves than the person next to them has of them. Okay. Meaning, I don't know if I said that right. I probably made you more confused than not. But everybody believes they're one way, when in fact, the general perception of them is another way. They might think they're clever. Other people see them as, they talk too much. They might think they're funny, and other people are like, oh my God, these jokes are so bad, or they're so off color, or they just don't make any sense. All of those kinds of things. Bosses are the same way. The role of the boss is to be a shepherd, to guide you through the process so that you can ask questions and learn and broaden your skill set, get a stronger skill set, better experience, all of those kinds of things, so that you're a bigger asset to the company. Bosses don't understand that. The worker is an asset to the company. The worker is an asset to a company. The boss thinks the boss, is the asset to the company. A bad boss thinks that they are the asset. They don't see the assets in front of them, their team, the people they supervise, the people they manage. They don't see that asset. They see that as something that they can get a pickaxe out and keep refining and keep digging and keep refining and keep digging. And they don't say, hey, I have Bill and he does these three things right. And we can work on these two things. And we have Sandy and she's fantastic. And we have Ian and he does these things. They don't see the asset in the people. They see the people as just a way for their raise. They see the people as a way for their bonus. They see the people as their next promotion. And that's it. And sometimes, and I've been in corporate America, I've been in one of the largest companies across the world, and I've seen people who will dog their employees, make them feel every aching possibility of angst and negativity that you could ever feel, and they will beat them down emotionally using words, all of those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, they're going to keep those people on their team, or a lot of those people on their team, because they know they can't do their jobs without those people. And their philosophy is, if I beat them down, they're going to look to me for the answers even more. You know, it's what I used to say about some companies. You know, they beat you down and build you back up. Well, they beat you down and they make it feel like the sun rises and sets with them. But that doesn't work, because nobody wants to be treated like that. And that's the thing they constantly forget. They assume that they have the best things to say, they have the best ideas. Everyone needs to follow in line behind them. Otherwise, they won't be able to get things done. They won't be able to get promoted. They won't be able to get a bonus, a raise, blah, 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 blah. They don't hear those employees. They don't treat those employees as people. They treat those employees as a number. They have so many positions on their team to fill. That's the problem. You know, bad bosses will call you on a Saturday because they didn't get their stuff together and they're behind in something. That's a bad boss. I've had plenty of bosses do that with me. On the flip side, I've had other bosses say to me, "Oh, it's the weekend. I don't do work on the weekends. Don't email me, don't call me." Well, sometimes all you have is the weekend because something's due on Monday, or you have a presentation on Monday, or you and that boss have a presentation on Monday. And for whatever reason, that boss, he or she, didn't get to it. You didn't get their response. You weren't able to go over the proposal, the presentation, whatever it may be. They also have to give a little bit, collaborate. Bad bosses are not humble. Bad bosses don't like to collaborate. And it makes for a really bad situation and one that you want to leave. A good boss will understand. A good boss will apologize and say, "I know it's Saturday. Please, can we go over this? It'll just be an hour." And they give you that hour and they go through it, and you feel good, they feel good, and then you can move on with your day. A good boss also will say, "Hey, you know, you worked on Saturday for an hour. Why don't you take Friday off at 2 or 3 or whatever the case is, or take an hour because you gave an hour." Whatever it might be, that's a good boss, because they understand you're working your butt off and you need to be rewarded, because without that reward, your morale's going to go down. You're going to want to leave. Thanks for listening. I really enjoyed this. This was a good topic. I'm sure I'll be talking about it more, but for right now, plenty of bad bosses. I'm sure I have more examples. I'll get to those eventually. Take care. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We really need your support. Thanks.